A pleasure to be with you this morning. My name is Audra Kohlfarber. I'm the director of the Bentonville Pathfinder Club. As you can see, I have several of my Pathfinders and staff with us this morning, and we are very excited to share with you our mission trip journey to the Navajo Nation of Arizona. We're excited because it was a trip that strengthened our faith and changed our life. And we're also excited because you all helped us get there. And we're very grateful for that. So if you'll bow your heads and pray with me before we begin. Dear Lord, we thank you for waking us up this morning and giving us another opportunity to be together on Sabbath and worship together. Lord, I ask that you let our words and pictures and stories today inspire other people to want to go out and do work for you and to be your hands. In your name we pray. Amen. All right, if you don't mind, I'm going to move over there so I'm not blocking your view. So several months ago, we were with you on Sabbath, and we were telling you about the mission trip that we were going to go on to Arizona. And we have since done that. And so I just want to kind of walk you through that journey and show you what your financial support and prayers helped us accomplish. So over a year ago, one of our staff members came to me with an idea. And her idea was that we take the kids on a mission trip. And I myself have never been on a mission trip before. My deputy director had never been on a mission trip before. So that idea was a little bit daunting, let alone going on one versus taking other people on one was a bit of a scary idea to us. But we discussed it, we took it under consideration, we prayed a lot, and we felt that the Lord was indeed leading us to go on this trip. So we thought, well, okay, let's go and give this a whirl. So a little over a year ago, we started preparing. The first thing we did was in our Pathfinder meetings, we do a book study for worship. And the book that we chose this year was a book by Kim Davis. It's put out by Voice of the Martyrs. It's called My Life, His Mission. And it is a book that was all about student missionaries and their experiences and practical advice on how to prepare for a mission trip, the kind of attitude you should go into it with, what to expect, and so on. So we literally read that book cover to cover this year with the kids in preparation, and it really had some good things that we learned along the way to help prepare us for this experience. Another thing that really helped us was the staff member that came to me with the mission trip idea had been to the Navajo Nation of Arizona before, to the place where we were going to go. So she was able to prepare us with advice and things about the culture that we wouldn't have known that we needed to expect. So after we decided to go, we realized, well, we're going to have to raise a whole lot of money. And we decided that we were going to need probably in the neighborhood of $10,000 to $12,000 to make this work. So we announced the mission trip to our church family, and within about 2 weeks, one member came forward to us and said, hey, I need 2 of my vehicles detailed, and I will gladly make a donation to your mission trip if you guys will take care of that for me. So that became our very first fundraiser, was us detailing 2 cars for our church members. So that was our very first start towards our budget goal. Some other fundraisers we did were collecting change, and Beth is going to come up and tell you about that. Hi, my name is Beth Huff. I'm the deputy director for the Bentonville Club. So one of the fundraisers that we decided to do was Change for a Change. One of our church members had donated these little banks that you see here to our club. And so we plastered on a cute little saying and handed them out to all our church members and said, okay, hey, you have spare change, jingling around in your couch cushions in your pockets. So if you wouldn't mind throwing it in this little bank and then giving it to us, that would be great. We were expecting to get a couple, maybe $1,000 out of the whole fundraiser. Well, out of just two of those little banks, we made $900, right off. And when Audra and I were talking about this mission trip, one of the big things that we said when we sat down with this staff member was that all we care about this mission trip is that our kids get to see God in a real way. And the Lord blessed not only in our fundraising, but they got to see God working in our fundraising before we even left Arkansas, which was amazing because money just came in out of nowhere. We would get a bank, someone would stash it in our closet for us, and we would take it to the bank, to the money changer thing, and it would be like $500 out of a little piggy bank. And the Lord just blessed like that over and over. And I couldn't even tell you how much money we got from just this fundraiser alone. It was amazing to see the Lord working. And what was even more amazing was that the kids saw it. And they came to us and they were like, Miss Beth, Miss Audra, where's all this money coming from? And the only thing we could say was, the Lord. That's where it's coming from, because we don't even know. And it was really amazing to see.
It really was like a loaves and fishes experience when we would turn in those change jars and find out how much was inside. Our next fundraiser we did was a fundraiser that we do every year, and that is we put on a Valentine dinner theater. This year it was entitled The Hitchhiker's Guide to Jerusalem, and we put on a play where it was a retelling of 4 biblical parables, including the Good Samaritan and the prodigal son, and all of our proceeds for that went toward our mission trip. And I would say it was probably one of our most successful fundraisers doing that event ever. So God really blessed that. We also decided to get our hands dirty and literally and learn how to make jelly. And then we sold it at a swap meet that we had at our church. So not only did the kids get to learn to do this kind of lost art of jelly making, but then we also sold those, and that turned out to be a pretty profitable fundraiser as well. And there you can see we're making strawberry jelly. And that is Jordan Walkup right there. So proof, I think you recognize him. He can make you jelly if you want some. We also hosted a pancake breakfast, and this was one of those same kind of experiences Beth was telling you about. Here's how it went. We had 27 people come to our pancake breakfast. We charged $5 per person to eat all you can eat. When we counted the money in the box at the end of the day, there was $1,200 in there. You do the math. So praise God. And it was just experiences like that over and over again. We put out some feelers to try and get some donations for different things to help alleviate our budget constraints. McKee Foods agreed to give us 550 servings of granola bars and Little Debbie's to take with us. We also had a food bank that donated everything you see in the picture there. One of my favorite stories about donations was one of the projects we were going to do in Arizona was to install 4 RV sites at the property where there's eventually going to be a church. Now, the reason they wanted the RV sites there is because they had an Amazing Facts evangelist team coming in to do an evangelistic series. It's actually going on right now. And the Amazing Facts team that was coming, they come in RVs and motorhomes, and they needed a place to park. And it's a very small town, and there was nothing like that within the vicinity for them to use for their RVs. So we were going to put in 4 RV sites with water, electric, and sewer lines. And one of our staff members that we were taking with us is an electrician. And so, thank goodness, because he knew what to do. A month or so before we left, he went to his supply house where he gets a lot of his supplies, and he was telling the people there what we were planning to do on this mission trip and that we're putting in these RV sites. And the guy said to him, "Oh, hey," he said, "like over a year ago, these people came in and ordered these electrical boxes that are specially made for an RV site, and they're like pillars, and they have plug-ins in them and a little flap that comes down to protect it from the weather and so on." And he says, if you're interested in those, he said, "I'll just give them to you at my cost." And he was like, "Yeah, we'd love to have those." He says, "How many do you have?" And he says, "Well, I have 4," which was exactly how many we needed. So that's just another story about how God provided and blessed us as we were preparing.
We did do a lot of preparing. You can see there, that's a run to Sam's Club the week before. Sam's Club also gave us $200 worth of free product to go for our trip. And we planned to do a vacation Bible school program while we were there that was completely and totally run by the kids. The staff didn't do anything. They did it all. They did the crafts, they did the Bible skits, they did the Bible stories, they did everything. And that took quite a bit of preparing. And here in this picture, you can see two of our kids up there. They're dressed in Bible costumes, and they're practicing their Bible skit for one of the nights of VBS. And then after all that preparing and fundraising, just like in a blink, it was time to go. And this is a picture of us on the day we pulled out of our church parking lot. We went in 5 vehicles, 2 SUVs, a van, and 2 trucks, one pulling a trailer. And so we loaded up everything and had a big prayer, and off we went to Arizona. Our first stop was in Amarillo, Texas. We did have to split the trip up in pieces because it was so far. So we stayed the night in a Holiday Inn. There's us eating breakfast and getting fueled up for the day. I'm sure you recognize these two fellows. This picture right here is a sack lunch station, and this became something we did every day, making sack lunches. In the morning, we would get up at 6:30, eat breakfast, and pack sack lunches to take with us to the work site. So we ate a whole lot of sandwiches, and we did that every single day. So we got pretty good at our sack lunch assembly line, which we did in the hotel lobby that day. Sunday afternoon, as we traveled, we happened to be going right by El Malpais National Monument, and we stopped there for 3 or 4 hours just to take in some of the sights. You can see here in the background, they have some big sandstone bluffs, and there's a natural arch that's formed right there, and so that was a cool thing we got to see. Also, one of the great things is this park was they have some ancient lava flows that you can hike out on, and there's these big cracks in the ground that you can, as you can see, crawl down inside and explore. So it was a really interesting hike to be able to hike out on these lava flows, which was just a little bit different than anything we experience around here. These are the sandstone bluffs from the top. All the kids wanted to look over the edge, which we were like, okay, but you have to lay down if you're going to look over the edge, because it was a really big drop. But it was just beautiful scenery. Here you can see Jordan sitting on top of a boulder. So we had quite a bit of fun just taking in those sights as we traveled. And then finally, Sunday evening, we made it to Arizona. We pulled over on the side of the road to take that picture for you right there. This is the church in Kenlichi where we stayed. This is off a dirt road, out in the middle of the reservation. Like literally, if you're standing right here where this picture is being taken and you turn 360 degrees, you would see pretty much nothing. Off in the distance, there's a small public school. Otherwise, you see pretty much nothing. It's out in the middle of nowhere. It was small. That's the sanctuary of the church. This is where we ate and slept and also held our adult evangelism and our vacation Bible school program. The site where we did the work was about 20 minutes away in the town called Window Rock, and this is what the site looked like, pretty much nothing. Our job was, of course, to install those RV sites on this site and also to put up 750 feet of chain link fence to secure that property for them. On Monday, we had kind of a slow start, and it was kind of frustrating and a little disappointing because we got there, we got up at 6:30, we packed our lunches, we drove into town, and we were at the work site at 8 o'clock, like raring to go, and they were not ready for us. And despite our efforts to communicate with them and make sure they were ready for us, things are just a little bit different out there as far as culture and communication, and they were not ready. And so we were like kind of standing around like, okay, what do we do? And we decided, you know what, let's just make the best of this. So we got out some trash bags and we started cleaning the property, which needed to be done. It was full of trash and a lot of debris and logs and things that need to be moved and picked up. So we spent the morning doing that. Meanwhile, a team went to town to pick up some large equipment that we had rented and also some extra supplies. So it was a little frustrating to start out with, but we decided to make the most of it and plow forward and do something. This is the only structure that's on that site in Window Rock. This is their church. It is a trailer. This gentleman right here, his name is Tony Varga. Him and his wife and their son are pretty much the only workers at that church. They do have a pastor, but he's shared in 4 other churches, so he's only there once a month. And this man and his wife pretty much do everything by themselves, so they were thrilled to have us there. We also learned that something we had not planned on was that they wanted us to paint this church. And it's metal, and it needed some special paint and priming and scraping and different things, so we kind of had to scramble together and get those supplies together to get that church painted. It was all faded. It had somebody else's logo on it, and so we got that together on Monday. Also, the men who knew what they were doing with electrical and things were able to spend that kind of slow time Monday planning what they wanted to do, making sure we had all of our supplies. So even though it was a slow start on Monday, we were able to kind of get everything lined up, so on Tuesday we could hit the ground running. Monday night, we went back to the church and held our first night at Vacation Bible School. This was very different than anything you would imagine. To get the kids there, because the church is in the middle of nowhere, we had to drive off into the reservation, pull up in front of these houses, honk. The kids would come out and get in the car with you and go. Who knows where their parents were? Who knows if their parents knew where they were going? It didn't matter. They just got in the car with you and came to church. And then when we were done with VBS, we put them back in the car and we drive them back off into the reservation and drop them all off at their prospective homes. So I was like, are you sure we should be doing this? But it didn't matter out there. So we would put like 12 or 15 kids in a van and bring them to VBS. And we did all of our VBS program in this one room. This is the fellowship hall at that church in Kinlachee. And so the first night we had about 24 kids there for VBS, which we were thrilled to have. The first night of VBS, we would start out in the sanctuary, and I'm going to let Philip come up and tell you about his experience in the sanctuary our first night of VBS.
One thing that really stands out to me the most about this whole experience was the Spirit of God was very real to me, more real than any other time in my life. Well, this particular night, I was supposed to be leading the song service like on this side of the sanctuary, but it had been like a really long day, and I'd only slept maybe 2 hours the night before. And as much as I enjoy singing, I didn't feel like it. I had a really bad migraine. I began to notice that some of the smaller children on the front row, they were really watching me. And I realized just how important this really was. So I breathed a real quick prayer for strength and courage. Almost instantly, I heard an angel whisper in my ear, "You can do this. The children need to hear the love of Jesus." And right away, I couldn't even believe my own ears. I started singing as though my life depended upon it. The joy in the faces of those children totally revived my spirit. And from that moment on, I knew everything was going to be all right.
We made some really special friends with the Navajo children, and Nate is going to come up and talk to you about this gentleman right here in this photo.
Okay, so that one in the cap right there, his name is Harry, and he's 14, about as tall as me, and he came the first night and was didn't really want to open up to us and talk to us a little. So we took him into the sanctuary to get it started, and then we sent some people in to talk to him, and then we went to the VBS, and he was coloring right there, and he just was always doing what he needed to do. You could look over and see Harry, and he was doing what he needed to do. He was a big help to the other kids as well with us. He was always he just was open to do whatever we wanted him to do. He was probably the one that came every day except for one day. He had to go to field trip or something. He had something to do that day, so he couldn't make it. But he came every day and participated. And throughout the week, he started to open up to us, and he would just start talking to us. He would come in, we'd welcome him, say, "How's your day?" And he'd say, "It's doing good," and go sit down. And then throughout the week, he would just make conversation with us at the beginning. And he wouldn't just say, "It was good." He would tell us what he did that day. I woke up, I ate, and then we went somewhere, went to town, and then he's here now. He was kind of shy, like not really open to just go out and do something. So he would sit in the back, but we would make all the kids go up to the front, and he would be kind of, "I don't know about this," and then he would just go up to the front. And I always would sit by him, and he became kind of like a friend to me, so, yeah.
All right. I think at the end of the week, you were able to give him a Bible too, weren't you? Yeah. All right. In the evening time after VBS was over, we usually have half an hour to kill, kind of blow off some steam and have some relaxing time. We would get surprise hugs from Marcus. This is Marcus right here. He made it his job to encourage us all throughout the week with surprise hugs, and it literally is exactly what it sounds like. Every evening, we would join together in the fellowship hall for a time of reflection and prayer. We had a reflection journal that we filled out each day, talking about how we saw Jesus' hands, or how we saw Jesus' love, or how we were Jesus' hands that day. So that's something we did every evening. This sums up Tuesday. So I told you that Monday was a slow start. Well, Tuesday was not slow. We got everything lined up, and we were ready to hit the ground running on Tuesday. So we showed up at the site about 7:30. We were all broken up into teams, and we went right to work. One team we had was the fence team. They got started on our fencing project. There you can see a group drilling a fence post with this hydraulic drill thingamajig. And we had to hand mix all the cement. There was no running water on the property, so we had to use barrels and a truck to go get water and haul it back and mix the gravel and the sand and the cement together. And after the drill would drill the holes, and we had to, the ground was really sandy, so things would just fill back in really quick. So we would have to use the fence post hole diggers and kind of clean the holes out after they were drilled. This is the electrical team, and I think Jordan is going to come up and talk to us about what they're doing here.
So most of you, I'm sure, know that's a ditch witch, but I don't know if you know how hard the ground is there. Here we have dirt and we have rocks. Out there, it's all dirt, but it's super fine, and when it gets packed together, it's basically like one big giant rock. And the poor ditch witch isn't made for that, but it actually managed to do it. You know, I'm sure there was an angel helping it along, because as soon as we finished digging the last few feet of our ditch, it broke and started leaking oil everywhere. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been able to do it. So, you know, that worked out all right, thankfully. And then there was another thing real quick, is that there's a little boy named Fernando that was super standoffish the first night. And then like the second night on Tuesday, he was like, can I have a piggyback ride? Maybe, please. And then by the end of the night, he'd just walk up to me and go, piggyback ride. I was like, okay. So their kids really opened up, and it worked out well.
It really was amazing. Like Jordan said, literally the last 2 feet, they dug with that ditch witch, and then the whole thing broke. So praise God for sending the angels for that thing. You can also see them there stretching the big, long piped electrical lines into those ditches they were digging, and that was for the RV sites that we were building. This is the painting team. They got started painting the church, and Miss Jan is going to come up and talk about her. She was the lead on the painting team, and she's going to come talk about that.
Well, our goal was to make sure that all the kids were involved in the work. Some of the adults felt like that the kids couldn't do this painting, the adults needed to do it. And so we got started taping, and the adults were saying, we don't need to tape so much because we can just use the edger and then paint this. Have you ever painted a semi-truck? No. I hadn't either. Anyway, so we got some of the tape on, and then we decided, okay, we're going to let the kids do this work, and we're just going to tape everything that doesn't need to have paint on it. So we used some extra tape and let the kids paint the semi-truck. It took 2 days because we had to put first one coat of something special on it, and then we had to paint the real paint. And the story about this truck is amazing because they got it donated to them, and they hauled it from another state up here to this site. And do you have a picture of inside? Okay. You'll see the inside later. And they placed it here. It was from some other mission project, and they had the semi-truck on the front of it. Well, during the night, somebody came along and stole the front of the truck part. And they reported it, and it ended up like 2 blocks away from where the missionaries lived. And that was a God thing because that just doesn't happen. It wasn't wrecked. It was out of gas, but it was fine. So that was amazing. When we finished, they allowed us to write in the little corner there, Bentonville Beavers, 2018. You got a picture of that? Okay, and one other thing I wanted to add, at VBS the first night, I was standing in the back, and there was these 3 young girls, Navajo girls, that sat at the table there, and I tried to be friendly to them and talk to them, but they would just turn away and turn to each other and just kind of whisper and stuff. And so, not much progress was made there. The second night, the third night, I was trying to talk with them and all, and they were whispering among each other. And then one of the girls got up, and she just ran up to me and bear hugged me. And I said, this is getting in there. And it just did more for me than maybe for the kids. But, my heart broke right then, too, because I had just learned that day from one of the missionaries that 1 in 3 young Navajo girls are sexually abused. And there was my 3 little girls there. When you go out into the community and maybe you have some pictures, we call them tiny homes here. Tiny homes. They're shacks that they live in. Just little trailers that are junked out. No running water. Some of them have electricity, some of them don't. And that's where they live. One of the missionary families there, they had adopted a young Navajo girl when she was just little, and then a grandmother had a baby in her arms and came up to the mission lady and says, I want you to take my little girl and raise her, my granddaughter, and raise her. And she said, what? And as it worked out that she was able to adopt the second little Navajo girl who was a meth baby. And this is, we have these problems here, but we don't see them as much. It's really on the surface there in that poverty in the United States. It's just amazing what we were able to see and experience and know that God needs us there.
The lady that is there full time described it as a third world country plopped right in the middle of the United States, and that really couldn't be more true. We sent also a team that day to town and to send out invitations. We needed some more materials from town, so we made like our 40th trip to Gallup, New Mexico, which was about 40 miles away, which was the only town the closest town with a Home Depot. So I think we got on first name basis with the people at the Home Depot there. But the night before, we realized that the pastor had said, you need to have flyers that you hand out that morning about VBS that say, hey, later I'm coming back to get you for VBS. And we were like, we didn't bring any flyers. And in my mind, I'm thinking, where am I going to get a computer and how am I going to print these flyers and blah, blah. And the man was like, well, do you have paper? We were like, yeah. He says, well, you got a marker? Yeah. He was like, well, just handwrite them. And to me, I'm thinking, handwritten flyers? Like, how tacky. But to them, it was totally fine. So literally the night before, we sat down and everybody hand wrote 2 or 3 flyers about VBS. And then we sent a team that morning out into the community to hand out these flyers. And this is a picture here of Otis talking to one of the Navajo girls and giving her one of our handwritten flyers, which actually worked wonders because we ended up the second night of VBS with 34 kids. And the night before, we'd had 24 kids. So it was just a little lesson for me. Sometimes, I get so caught up in, oh, this needs to be printed and in color and pretty and everything. And there, it didn't matter. It was just, you get the word out and people come. VBS was very, very different. The culture is different, and the kids there are very different. They don't have the greatest attitude towards white people, as they called us. In fact, they would say some pretty terribly mean things to the kids as they were up front sharing their Bible stories. Just yell it out. I don't even want to repeat it because it was very terrible things to us. Kind of racial type remarks, and the staff and the kids, we were not expecting that. And here we are up front trying to go through the story that we've practiced and teach them this craft, and they're just yelling these horrible things. And it was very discouraging, and it kind of took us off guard, and we didn't know what to do. And by the end of night 2 of VBS, we were really discouraged because it just didn't seem like they were listening or they cared or they wanted to be there or anything. So we got together and we laid hands on each other and we had a huge prayer. And we realized, you know what, perhaps we were being a little haughty, as in, here I am, coming to save you and share Jesus with you, when that was not the point. So we prayed for, us to fall away and for Jesus to come forward. And Jean is going to come and share with you kind of the difference that happened through VBS through the week.
So at the beginning of the week, it was kind of frustrating because there was so many kids that weren't paying attention. They would yell, and you couldn't hardly get anything out before someone else would yell. And the second night was probably the hardest because no one was paying attention. There was a lot of kids there, and we were happy for that. But there were so many more people that weren't paying attention, and it was kind of really rowdy. And like she said, everyone was getting discouraged, feeling real bad. But by the third night, we saw God move, and everyone that was there was sitting, listening. It was just it was really amazing how God moved them throughout the week. And yeah.
On Wednesday, by Tuesday night, we were feeling really discouraged, and we prayed about it, and it was great because Wednesday was our play day, and it was nice just to kind of have that refresher. We drove about an hour away to Canyon de Chelly National Monument, which is like a little mini Grand Canyon. Some of our kids were able to earn their junior naturalist, I think that's what it's called, award. And we also got to this picture. This is a Navajo hogan that they had set up there, and we got to go inside, and there was a person in there telling about Navajo culture, and we got to learn a lot that day. This is some pictures of the canyon in the background. It was really just beautiful. It was sunny and beautiful, but not too hot. It's really dry there. They don't have the humidity like we have, so it's kind of nice to be outside. This is our entire group in kind of a panoramic view of the canyon there that we went to visit.
We wrapped up our day and headed back that evening for another round of VBS. Every night, everybody had an assigned spot they were supposed to be in. This was our welcoming committee at the door. They handed out name tags, or the smiling face, make sure everyone got talked to, and so on and so forth. This is some photos of picking up the kids. As you can see here, they're in a minivan. There are 5 kids in the back seat, and probably another 5 in this middle seat. And that was when we would just drive out into the reservation, honk the horn. They would get in and come back to VBS with us. This young man right here, they lived very close to the church in a trailer that did not have running water. And his parents and him were probably 3 out of 5 or 6 people that regularly attend the Kinlachee Church. And their family got all of their water from the church. They would come with trucks and use the hose and fill up these barrels and take it back home, and that was their water that they used at their home. It was just astounding to me that these homes didn't have running water. Every night we would teach Bible stories. This is Jordan up here teaching a story about I don't remember what. And all the kids for VBS. And Otis is going to come up and share a story about a special connection he made with one of the Navajo children.
All right, so let me just say first that when my brother over there said it was rowdy, he did not emphasize it enough. Has anyone done a VBS before? Lucky you, because this was not a VBS. This was a yelling match. I'm telling you, I was telling a story and just yelling back and forth with these kids, and somehow I think it got through to him. Because on the last day, a kid that was particularly rowdy, we were handing out Bibles, and there were 5 or 6, and we were all just doing a short VBS. And I handed out Bibles to every one of the larger kids that could read and stuff, because I felt like they all should have one. And I gave one to a kid, and he said, "I don't want that, take it back." So I put it down, and he told me, "Take it back." And I picked it back up, and he put his hand on it, and he smashed it into the table, and he said, "No, don't take it back, I want it." And I felt really moved by that, because he said he didn't want it, but he wanted it. He just didn't want me to know he wanted it. That's a tongue twister, but anyway, he got in the car with us that day too, and we were taking him back, and he didn't even want to get out of the car. And I felt like out of all the rowdy children that we had there, that one was affected the most.
Thank you. So Thursday, this sums up Thursday. It was a 40-gallon type day. It was very hot and dry. We drank water like crazy. And Thursday, it was a push to kind of really make some progress and get things done at the work site. This is some photos of the kids working on the fence, and I think Nick is going to come up and talk to you about the 9 trillion wire ties that they put on the fence.
I don't know how many it was actually, but it was a lot. Yeah, it felt like a lot. Yeah, it was fun, and it got really hot, but we continued to work through, and we worked as a group, and it went pretty quick. I mean, 1 week is kind of quick, but I enjoyed it, and I liked working out there, and seeing all the kids was amazing, and just how they showed up at VBS every night, and how we got to influence them. It was amazing.
I think it was actually 600 or 700 wire ties, but to ask them, it was 9 trillion. We really had to push that last day to get the fence done. We had to go and get more materials from a storage facility that was a couple miles away and haul these fence rows. We had to use the truck and to come along. I tell you what, I know more about chain link fences now than I think I ever need to know. But anyway, so we were pushing to get that fence finished. Everybody's working hard. We still had a team over working on the RV sites, getting all the lines buried. They were running water lines that day. We had a couple young kids who were going around after us, picking up all the trash and things that we were laying down from working. This is Jordan. That's a sawzall right there. He's sawing off fence posts. He was pretty good at that. This is the inside of that trailer church. After they got it
finished painted. They had to pull all the tape off and then clean the inside. And it is very dusty and dirty out there. There's no grass or anything, so it's just like dirt on the ground, and all that got tracked in and ground into the floor. So this was literally an all-day job, just taking the tape off the trim and deep cleaning the inside of their church there. And you can see it looks pretty narrow, but that is literally, they hold church services in there. So, and there's a picture later of that. This is the finished RV sites. These are those posts that we got donated that I told you about earlier. It doesn't look like much, but this is the electrical with cement poured. We had to run lines for that. This is the water faucet. We had to run water lines. So even though it didn't, when we got done, we were like, that's it. But it took a lot of work to get those 4 RV sites put in. This is a picture of one of our staff members, Dana, putting our name on the trailer. We did get permission to do that, and we didn't have any paint. All we had was green fingernail polish. So she painted our name on the back little corner of the trailer with green fingernail polish, and I would say that's a pretty great job right there. Before we left, we also gave all the kids a Sharpie and let them sign the fence, put their name and a little sentiment of some kind on there, just to leave their mark and kind of commemorate all the work they did on that throughout the week. This is the finished product of the church. It looks pretty good. All nice and painted and ready to go for Sabbath. And then this is the finished 6-foot section of the chain link fence of the 750 feet that we installed. This, you can barely see her, but right there, that is the lady, Dara Varga, and her husband Tony are the full-time ministry workers. They came by before we left on Friday, and they were very sweet. She gave all the kids a piece of petrified wood that was from Arizona. She gave all the adults a book about full-time ministry in appreciation for our work there. This was Sabbath in Kinlachee. We split up into 2 groups. The majority of us stayed back in Kinlachee because we had another VBS program to run that morning. We also had adult evangelism. We also were running the entire church service and the Sabbath school program because the pastor was not there that week. And they normally only have 4 or 5 people that come every Sabbath. So most of us stayed there to do that. A group of 6, I think, went back into Window Rock to the trailer church to assist with the church service there. You can see there's Jordan up front helping with the service. This man right here, his name is Dale Wolcott. He's the full-time pastor. They share him with 4 other churches, and it was his week to be in Window Rock. And there's what it looks like to have church in that trailer. And you can see there was maybe 7 or 8 other people in attendance that day. We made a lot of great friends, and Dana is going to come up and talk to you. This is Dana, and this is a special friend that she made there. She's going to come tell you about her.
Well, like they told you when we first got there, we got there at night, and you couldn't see anything where we were at. And so the next morning I woke up and I thought it'll be better tomorrow because I'll be able to see where we're at. And we were literally in the middle of nowhere. And so the first staff meeting, they told us, you're going to make friends that you don't want to leave. And I'm like, where are these friends going to be? Because there's no one out here. So the community is spread out literally around the church, and it's like everybody's 15 to 20 minutes away. So this lady, her name was Ramona Begay. I made friends with her. She came to the VBS meeting. She came with the kids, and they put her in the back of a van. And she was like 67 years old, and she had to climb over seats. They had to put her over seats to put her in the very back. And so when they got ready to leave, they were like, can you take her home? And I'm like, yeah, I'll take her home. And then they told me this story about her being in the back of the van, and these kids passed her over the seats. And so I told her, I was like, we're not going to do that to you anymore. You're a lady, and you deserve to have a special seat in the front of the truck. And so she rode in the front every night, and she got where she wouldn't ride with anybody else but us. Me and my husband were originally assigned to be greeters, and then we ended up taking people that were coming to the meetings that were going on, the seminar meetings that were going on, and so it worked out really well because I just fell in love with her, and she loved us, and so I'll always remember her, and so she was my friendship that I formed. But there was another lady too that had asked to be picked up at night. and her name was Carol Begay. And Begay's a kind of just a name that they use. They don't really have last names that they stick with. It's usually their name is some kind of Indian name, their clan name. So Begay is a huge last name out there. Everybody's last name is Begay. But Carol, she had come to the meetings, and she was real quiet and kind of standoffish. She didn't really want to share anything about herself. And I had gotten to talking to her, and she had just moved back from the valley, and she had some problems with addiction. She had been in an abusive relationship, and she had been praying she wanted a dog because she was living by herself on the reservation very close to a highway, and it's dangerous there for a woman to be by herself. And this very second night that we pulled in, the kids came out and they were like, "Come look, Miss Dana, come look." And a lady had brought 3 puppies. And so Carol and I had prayed about her having a dog on the way to the meeting, and there was a puppy for her. And so she got a puppy the second night, and then it was a couple nights later, we were driving her home, and I didn't know about her addictions or anything then, but she had been crying, and she's just kind of opened up to me and just started telling me all these things and all of the abuse. And I have some things in my past that, I really didn't want to share with her because I didn't hardly even know her. And God just impressed upon my heart to just share with her what I could and tell her about myself. And we were able to pray together, and I made a connection there that, she's like a sister of my heart now because it was amazing how God worked through prayer. And there was numerous times, like one time we went to get her, and she had lost her keys, and she couldn't leave her house because she couldn't lock the house and get back in. We stopped and prayed through her. God just impressed through her. Every time I was with her, I prayed with her. And so it was an amazing experience, and it brought us closer with friends that God supplied them. We didn't know where they were going to come from, but God made that happen, and it was an amazing trip. It was my first mission trip. And I would definitely go again and do it all over again.
And just like that, it was all over, and it was time to head home. And it was a long drive home, but I'm happy to report it was uneventful. With 27 people and 5 vehicles, you really expect to have flat tires or vehicle troubles of some kind. You just expect that. And we had absolutely none. No trouble at all. So praise the Lord for sending the angels to protect us. So here's what's happened since we've left. First off, they prepared for their evangelism. Remember, I told you they had that amazing facts team coming in. And yes, that's the fence we built right there that they're attaching that to. The amazing facts evangelists did come. They set up this giant tent in that open space of the site there. You can see the church that we painted there in the background. And they've been having, as you can see, quite an attendance for that area. Given that church attendance is 5 to 8, this is really amazing that they have that large of an attendance. And they're doing VBS inside that church with more Navajo children. And the VBS supplies that we didn't use, we were able to leave behind for them, the extra crafts and everything, so they had plenty of materials to use for that effort. And Sean is going to come up and share one last testimony with you.
I've always heard that when you're doing the Lord's work, the devil does his darndest to make you fail. And, the thing that I realized about this mission trip, it was like a unity of our church in that everybody that was there and everybody that's in the seat here helped. It was like, I know that in our Sabbath school we've been discussing how maybe there's only 20% of the people working, but in this experience I knew that 100% of our church did something to help this move forward. And when I was there, I realized that here in 1 Corinthians 10:13, it says, "No temptation has overtaken you except what is common to mankind. And God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you are tempted, He also provides you a way so that you can endure it. And so the jobs that I got to be involved with, since my wife is the director, I get to do some of the things that people don't want to do. And since she was there, she had to make sure things were running smoothly at the VBS program. And so since we rented a SUV, the only other person that could drive was me. So, first day, it was a little scary because you get in the car, you don't know if anybody's going to show up, because that day, the lady that came to prepare us, she said, well, you guys should have done the advertising this way. Well, her idea of advertising was you needed to get out, knock on every door, make that personal connection, and let them know you're doing something. So, well, we didn't do it. And I was afraid. I was like, hey, well, we just brought all these kids out here. We just spent all this money. We got the support of many individuals that helped us get to this point. So, Miss Renee, she was the one that knew how this was run. She said, you drive up into the community, you honk your horn twice, and kids will just get into the van. So I'm like, sure, let's see how that's done. I got into the car, and we get into the community, and I didn't really want to divert from what she was doing, so I followed closely behind her. And after a few minutes, 3, 5, 10 minutes, I don't know what it was, there were no kids in the back of the car, and I was like, well, what are we going to do? So I realized one thing. It wasn't what we were going to do. It was what God was going to do for us. So before we split up, when we did split up, I sat there, I prayed, dear God, please let one kid get into the car. And, we continued driving around, and it was crazy because the road that we just came down, I see these two kids off in the distance, and they're running. Wait for us. I'm like, whoa, there's two. And by the time we got back to the church, there was 8 in my car. And when I got ready to take them home, the whole car was full. And I scratched my head. Where did all these kids come from? And when I was ready to go back and take them all home, the part that was in this verse that says, but when you are tempted, He will also provide a way out so that you can endure it. And I'll tell you how true that is. When we were getting all the kids to get back in the car, one of our kids, Otis, got stuck in the back of the SUV. It was the trunk of the SUV. We just slammed it down. Okay, we're going. The chaos that was in the car was like, the way I describe it was, it was like they were going to torch the place. I didn't have a connection with these kids, and I thought the SUV was going to be destroyed, and if it wasn't for my friend Mr. Otis, I think that's what would have happened. The first night we got there, we've got a torched SUV. It was good because it wasn't ours. We rented it and didn't have to worry about it, but by the last night, or on Sabbath when we did our last VBS program, I realized that God was there. And it was testament not only to what we've done, but what everyone in the chair here has done because of the support that you gave us. You know, it's like what Paul talks about. Everybody has their part to play. And even though it's not something that we see on a daily basis, we are doing it. We need to keep the hope. We need to realize that every little piece that we do matters, because we wouldn't have been able to do this without your guys' help.
Well, anyway, we'd like you to continue to pray for the children and the adults out in Window Rock and Kinletchee. I know we are. They're dear to our hearts. If you're interested in following what happens out there, if you go on Facebook and search @Go, like ATGO, @Go Ministries, that is the group Tony and Dara Vargas's ministry, and you can see pictures of us and what's happened since then at that work there. So once again, we thank you very much for helping us accomplish this. It really has changed our life, and we are already making plans for another mission trip this next June. So we appreciate that, and God bless you all for your support.